It's time for another Friday Mindful Tech Roundup. So welcome to this very first Friday Tech Roundup from the team here at Mindful. So this is my opportunity to share with you some of the things we've been working on here at Mindful. So this is the first one. We got a bit of catching up to do. So I am going to take a couple of minutes to blast through a bit of history and get you up to speed. So how did Mindful come about? So a buddy had been playing around with CPU mining for quite a while. He started asking me all sorts of questions about how to optimize aspects of his Linux environment in order to optimize the miner, writing shell scripts and automating some of the processes. And when I dug into it, I realized he was doing quite a bit of work to move beyond the open source mining engines that are available to really get the most out of the computing resources that he had at his disposal. When we started working together, we realized we both had a kind of, common vision. He from the mining side, and then me in terms of, some of my rules I live by in terms of making beautiful products out of more complex technologies and therefore making them more accessible to more people. So when we put that together, we decided to create a Mac GUI application called CoinStash that would enable anyone to just install a miner on their computer, flick a switch and start mining. So simple that even my father-in-law could do it, and that's saying something. So I decided to abstract the mining component of the app from the GUI part into a framework. Well, because it makes sense to do so. One of our project co-founders knew an app developer and was talking to her about the work that we were doing, and he asked if he could use the framework in his app. He had an idea about using it as an alternative way for users to get access to paid features of his application. So we said, yeah, sure. And he put it in the app, made a little bit of a mess of it, but put it out into the world. And it kind of was a bit of a big deal. So Ars Technica picked up on it. Some very, very interesting security hacker researcher did a deep dive into it on behalf of Ars Technica. They wrote an article that was picked up then by Engadget, by TechRadar, by Mashable, Apple Insider. It just went viral. Even the BBC wrote about it. And we thought that was awesome. It wasn't all the most positive of sentiment, but there were some really interesting things, and more than anything it raised the topic that we've been thinking about into a mainstream discussion. So from there, Apple decided to actually pull it from the App Store, and subsequently they've decided that crypto mining apps are not allowed in any of their app stores, whether it's iOS, macOS, tvOS, and that's a pretty big deal to take that kind of to take that very firm stance and sort of rewrite their guidelines, based on that. Not the best scenario, not the best outcome in terms of what we had in mind, but still showed that there was an impact, really. Now, although we released the initial CoinStash consumer app, through this process we kind of pivoted our idea to being to following this one of more of a business-to-business model, helping product developers, app developers like myself to monetize their products using this alternative mechanism. And what we call that is a new value exchange between the app developer and the customer. One that the customer has to recognize and opt into very transparently and very clearly, but one that is possible and feasible in this new world with cryptocurrencies. Ultimately, we're really confident that the issues that were written about in those articles with those initial experiments can be overcome. It was a great learning process, and we're kind of undeterred from the negativity of it, knowing that we can actually put things in place which makes this technology viable for this type of... So from there we built out the Mac framework, and we've also introduced a Windows framework, not to mention a whole suite of API endpoints as well. We're now a team of 13 and growing. We have a team in New York and a few dots scattered around Europe. Awesome early stage investors and some kick-ass mentors who are really industry specific. They have a wealth of experience in the space that we're in, and it's really helping us to navigate this new territory in this new landscape. So this is the history, this is how we've got to where we are today, and you're now ready to hear about what we've got going forwards. So the second part of getting you up to speed with the history is just to give you a bit more of an overview of our technical architecture. So I'd already introduced and talked about some of the sort of key areas of development in that little history, but let's just take a minute to unpick those a little bit more. So first up we have our consumer app. It's called CoinStash. So when we decided to pivot towards the business-to-business model, we still decided to release that out into the world. It's a great prototypical demonstration app for the underlying kind of mining capabilities. And fundamentally what that app represents is a GUI Mac miner. You can create wallets for the currencies the miner supports, which includes Monero, Electroneum, and a handful of others. You can create wallets, and you can also bring your own external wallets into the CoinStash platform and mine to those. And that's it really in terms of the consumer wallet. We've got some new features coming. We are slowly updating some of the more consumer-facing features of that product. Including the one that is most sought after, which is the portfolios feature, where we show you from your CoinStash wallets, we don't do this for the external wallets, but the CoinStash wallets, what your current balance is, and gradually we'll be introducing features that enable you to do things like transfer your balance or send payments or add amounts into those wallets. So full kind of wallet and currency portfolio capability. So that's coming very soon. We've been working on that. It's in testing for the initial release, and we'll let you know when that's available. The second part is the developer tools. So as I said earlier, we have a Mac framework and a Windows framework. So firstly, the Mac framework, which is the first one we made. Very easy to integrate into your Mac applications. As a framework, it's written in Swift, which means it's compatible back to macOS 10.9, I believe. And we've got a sample project which demonstrates the implementation and the interface to the framework within a macOS application. We've done that in both Objective-C and Swift, so regardless of what your app is written in, you have some really good solid reference material there. Not to mention at some great documentation on our website, which really unpacks what all the features of the frameworks are about. The Windows framework we started much later, so obviously it's had the benefit of some learnings, but it's a whole different platform, a complete rewrite specifically for the Windows platform. This is written in C#. For .NET compatibility, we sort of selected that as the most sort of broadly used toolkit for Windows developers. That said, on our GitHub repository, we've got some examples of how to actually integrate the Windows DLL dynamic link library into Windows app, not just built with .NET, C#.NET, but also C++, MFC framework, and we're gradually extending broader support to the different frameworks and languages that are possible to build natively for the Windows platform. But that'll take a little time, but we're working on that, and very happy to work with publishers that have those needs to enable the technology for them. Making all of this possible, this isn't just a client library based technology. That is integrated to a core Mineful backend platform. With the platform brings a suite of APIs, helpful API endpoints that as a publisher you can have access to enable a much richer integration with your particular concept. And we've got publishers working in all sorts of creative ways to use the underlying metrics around mining, around hash rates, around accepted shares, around currency that is earned, to build that into mechanics that are specific to their product, where they have in-app point systems and game mechanics where there can be a correlation between those two things. So we're really excited about the creative possibilities on top of this technology, not just as a straightforward payment mechanism. Finally, we have a whole bunch of projects which are kind of considered more experimental R&D projects, and You know, these revolve around different areas of the longer term vision around how we enable the management of cryptocurrencies that has been mined, and certain automated trading mechanisms which are really exciting. We've got different ways to actually bring client interfaces from the embedded publisher-based products to potentially white labeling our mining client apps so they can act as like a sister app to your product, or you know, white labeling them for causes. We've seen a lot, like the Hope page with UNICEF and others that are now starting to experiment with using crypto mining to raise funds for causes. Fundamentally, our Mineful products can be used in the same way, and we're looking at the various tools that will make that really easy for charities and causes and companies that want to white label our technology to be able to do that. So the final section, and what will be the main section of these Friday updates going forward, is a very brief and rapid overview of the key priorities that we've been working on this week. So this week, we have been largely focused on working with the antivirus companies to ensure that this technology, which unfortunately, you know, because of the way I'm sure you probably heard, it gets used by cryptojacking hackers to infect host machines with this technology to silently mine currencies like Monero. And again, Monero gets a bad rap because it's always the one that's kind of seemingly used or talked about in the press. You know, so antivirus companies are pretty hot on signals from this type of technology. And obviously in a legitimate use case where the user has opted in and chosen to actually deploy this technology onto their machine, the user experience of having an antivirus company pop up and say, you know, this is potential malware, you know, is really a hurdle that we have to overcome for publishers to really be able to integrate this into their products and for customers to be able to experience it in the way that we believe they should be able to. So we have an ongoing amount. We are really focused on cracking this antivirus problem, and we're working both at low level code level indicators all the way up to, and the way we work with antivirus companies through code auditing, through the way we sign our packages, to the way they understand our business, to ensure that, you know, how we're separated from the bad actors, so we have a genuinely great experience. The second area that we've been working on that side is really the continued roadmap of the framework development. Already the frameworks are quite extensive in terms of being able to integrate the miner and start mining. There are some configuration options that you have to work around depending on each user's system as a developer. We want to take as much of that work away from you as possible. So we're building smart analysis and detection systems to work out the optimal configurations for each of your customers' machines so that you don't have to do that. That ranges from, you know, the way the miner connects to the pool, the way that certain miner configuration settings are used depending on the host device, or the way you select the most optimal currencies to mine, or even recognizing the correct GPU type, whether it's AMD or whether it's NVIDIA, and the appropriate configuration and settings for those. So we want to take all of that away from you, and we've got ongoing work happening to you know, really make that as simple as possible in the use of our tools. Third up, on the platform side, we have been working with a new proxy technology that the miners connect to, which gives us the capabilities of tying that into some of our automated currency selection systems, so that fundamentally we can roll out currency switching changes across the publisher networks based on our crypto analysts and market tracking to make sure that you're always mining the right currency. Not necessarily the most profitable, but often that's a key driver, but the right currency to optimize the efficiency and the returns of the entire process for you. And there's lots of factors at play there. We'll talk about those more in the future. So there have been some of the key things we've been working on this week. So those are some of the key things we've been working on this week. That's the Friday update from Mineful. I hope you have a great weekend. I'll see you next week.